Hi guys, quick update here for YouTube. It's 16th of February, Friday 2024. Hope everyone's doing great. So we'll start off with the stock market. Obviously Bitcoin has surprised me somewhat, but we're too busy in the group making money off Nvidia. I mean, we've got people in the group who are up 6 figures on this move. I still think it goes higher. We've basically looking at this bubble to continue all the way up to 2000. Yeah, so let's just extend this screen a little bit more. So you know, we're still looking at this to become a near $5 trillion company. So you know, the move in Bitcoin has surprised me. I thought, and I still believe, frankly, that Nvidia was the better play. We have this pattern here which we teach on the masterclass. It's now going into a 1-2. I don't think there's any evidence of a major crash just yet on Nvidia. There will come a day when this does crash, probably 50% in the space of a week. I just don't think we're there yet, but we will have a look at Bitcoin too later on. But like I said, people are comfortable profits in the group. The advantage of being in the group is that you get access to all the calls early, and obviously you can take advantage of them. Right now, as a new buyer, would you really want to buy at 737? I'm not too sure. A week before the earnings. Now, what Bitcoin has taught us is that it's a liquidity market, so we do know that. Now, you know, we still have this cup and handle test. We had a bit of a sell-off on Monday. We have recovered pretty much all of that. We're still looking at this year pretty much to be split into two. So the US election and the end of the year is here. Obviously we can't just go sideways from here. I'm still looking, as we said at the start of the year, frankly, since October, you know, that's a near 100% compounded move for an index which barely makes 13% annually compounded. That's a 100% compounded move. So you're bound to get liquidations and short-term sell-offs. Does it mean that the bull trend is over? There's still no evidence of this. And that's the key message here. Once again, we're not looking at a major correction just yet, 10-20%, even greater, not from these levels. I said at the start of the year, we're going to split this year pretty much into two. We're still looking at an interim top here. I'd say somewhere between 54 and 5600, somewhere between, let's say, Easter and let's say June, right? So we have a couple of 100 points there to aim for. We have a couple of months. Obviously, as we get closer to those targets, the Elliott wave count will be a lot more clear. Obviously, this is not the chart which I share with the group. The group, you get access to the detailed charts with the fibs, with the targets, with the everything. This is just a summary overall that I like to do on YouTube. So first half of this year, we're looking at an interim top, and then we're looking at the volatility to increase going into the US election. So I'm still maintaining my end of year target is frankly 5100, which ironically is where we are now. But obviously we're 9 months away from the end of the year, nearly 10 months. So we can't go sideways. And we're not going to go down then up. We're going to go up then down. So nothing much to really say. Short term, we can have a look at the short term here. You know, I mean, obviously we do have CPI next week and we have Nvidia earnings. Nvidia is driving this market, which, like I said, I identified the opportunity late at the end of 23. You could argue I was quote unquote wrong on Bitcoin, but it's all about the probabilities and the risk. You know, we're going for a bubble move in Nvidia like Cisco did to 2000. So I still deem that to be the higher trade, and obviously people in the group have taken massive advantage of that. Even without leverage, it's a ridiculous move. It's 50% in 6 weeks. Very rarely in human history has that ever occurred. Now, anyway, let's just say hypothetically this is the short-term top. I'm not saying it is, but let's just say that it is, right? You know, we could be going into a more complex kind of flat, yeah? Maybe up until, let's say, I don't know, first, second week of March. Then we continue higher. And like I said, we end up at the same targets. 54, 50, 5600. Then we end up falling into the US election. So even if this is part of a more complex correction, then that's fine. We're still going to repair itself. I doubt very much it gets below 46, 4700. I don't think there's enough selling pressure to justify that kind of level. But should we correct, that would be one interpretation away from the primary interpretation that we're still ongoing. This is still ongoing, and it's a WXY, as we have deemed since the start. I mean, we've called every move on the S&P near perfect. Comfortably been long since here. Like I said, it's 100% annual compounded. It's like one of the, you know, top 5 moves in human history in terms of how much. I mean, this is an index which barely does 13%. Yeah, And as it turns out, it's going to do a lot less than that, because we're saying second half of this year, it's pretty much going to give all of this back. But we're in February, right? And, there's no signs of an impending crash. So, that is, so the first interpretation, as I've just said, bit of a correction, sideways, form a larger flap, assuming you get 5 into here for an A, then B, then C, then second half of the year. If not, we're still continuing on this trend. And rather than the AB being here, the AB is still here. And this is still part of a 1-2-1-2, which is still completely valid count. Now, how will we know? Well, technically, if that gets taken out, it can't be a 1-2 coming down. This is why we like to use Elliott wave. The 2 can't cross into the 1, can it? It can't cross below the origin point. Otherwise, how can you have more than 100% retracement wave 2 compared to wave 1? It's not possible. That could still be the AB down here. Here, 1-2-1-2. 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5. Like I said, next week you've got CPI, but more importantly, you've got Nvidia. Nvidia is now the key to this market, to quote Jim Cramer, even though it's been the key, as far as I'm concerned, since 400 when we went long. Extremely correlated to everything. So the day Nvidia tops here short term, you can guarantee you're going to get some kind of sell-off. I mean, that's just ridiculous, right? It's all about Nvidia. And at this point in time, do we think Nvidia is going to crash? No. So that's the key with the S&P. If you want to go into individual stocks, obviously SMCI has had a huge move. ARM's had a huge move. We discuss all of these, right? We identified the bubble in AI well before anyone else, and now everyone's basically FOMOing in. But it's very long. If you're comfortably a long-term shareholder of Nvidia, highly unlikely to come back down again. Now, let's go into Bitcoin. Like I said, I identified the opportunity in Nvidia greater than the opportunity in Bitcoin. So let's go over the 3 possible interpretations here. This market, which seems to defy the laws of Elliott wave and logic a lot of the time, doesn't really make any sense. So obviously I was thinking, as we have said, if 20k wasn't the big wave 5 crash, then we were looking at a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. So like I said, this just seems to defy the laws of physics and everything else, maths and everything else. So 3, 4, 5, yeah, that obviously seemed to be a very logical play. SPACs had a bubble, Tesla had a bubble, Peloton. None of those, I mean, most of those have gone bankrupt now, and most of those will never ever, you'll never see the high on Tesla ever again. Much like when Nvidia hits 2000, you're never going to live long enough to ever see it make a new high ever again. So obviously it's very valid, the interpretation that I had. Now, I was a little bit confused because I'm calling S&P 5600 an Nvidia bubble move. Then Bitcoin is still a liquidity marker more than anything else. So obviously, that was a contradiction in terms that this would go down as those markets would go up. But that was my primary thinking. Now, this is just defying all laws of logic and everything else. I really don't understand what drives this market. Other than the supply and demand metrics, but it has to follow the rules of Elliott wave. So if that's not the 5, and then the 5's up here, then I'm just rather confused with the whole count, because then that invalidates everything here. How are you supposed to count this? Why does this market not top in 5 waves and then correct? It just seems to go on and on and on. Anyway, forget that. So let's just take out the long-term Elliott wave count. It's obviously in doubt, right? So let's give you the 3 interpretations that we have on the table. One interpretation is that it's just a larger X wave, right? And this is the ABC, right? So as per the first count, right? And rather than the C wave being here, it's here, and that was just a 3, 4, 5, right? So one count is that we have indeed topped, and yes, that was the super cycle high, and now we've just made an incredibly deep X wave, and now we're going to come back down again. Basically the exact move I was calling from here, assuming that was the 5, because that was very valid as a 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but also unfortunately you can read that as a 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, then 5. So that would be the first interpretation. Keep it nice and simple. The bubble did peak at 69k, and now we're going to go to, now we've completed an X wave, and technically the top is in as of basically yesterday, right? So that would be one interpretation. Second interpretation, that this is defying all logic, and that is indeed a 1, 2, and obviously 3, 4, 5. Now, if you were to extrapolate these targets, that gets you the wave 3 at around 84. It gets you a back test at 69. Then it gets you a wave 5 at 100k. Now, I obviously wasn't believing in this when it was down here. When it was here, I said 30k. When it was here, I said 44k, followed by 50. So as far as I'm concerned, we called the 44k, and then this has just been a bit of a hiccup here. Like I said, the first count is that it's topped. The C wave is now definitely in. Second interpretation, which I think defies logic and breaks many Elliott wave rule sets, especially the long-term count. So you'll have to throw your Elliott wave playbook out of the window, right? Because this I was deeming as a super cycle 4, then that was the 5. And I honestly don't know how to count this from a long-term perspective. If this was to break 69k, which once again is possible, right? We're saying a huge move on Nvidia still needs to materialize. We don't think the S&P is going to crash violently from 5100, although the end of the year target is ironically 5100. But like I said, we're going to rally into Easter here, 54, 56. The key is trying to identify when that top is going to occur and at what price. Obviously, then we're going to have a very severe correction all the way back down again into the US election, because there's a lot of risk, here second half of this year. Also, with oil, interest rates, I'm not going to go into it. We discuss all that in the group. So this count, in my opinion, defies the long-term count, because I'm honestly lost in the long-term count. I just don't know. I honestly don't know if there was a new high here, how would you actually define this long term? I don't think you can, which then makes Bitcoin the only asset in human history where we don't have a formalized long-term count. It just seems to be crashing 80% and then making a new high again and again and again. But let's try and work it out. So that's the genesis down here, right? 1, 2. Everyone would agree that's a 1, 2. So is that now the 3? And is that the 4? That's the only way I can do it. Now, I just don't like that. I suppose it works. 1, 2, 3. The 3 looks shorter than the 1. I don't like that. That's a 4. So everything from 11 all the way up to 21. That was all a wave 3, really? I don't know. I would actually welcome some comments here from the YouTube subs. Was all that a wave 4, really? All of this was just a wave 4? Really? Fine. Let's run with this. I don't like this count clearly, but yes, that would be the wave 4 in. That means everything the last 10 years was just a wave 3, and the 20k top was simply a third of a third top. I don't know. I don't know how much I like that, because this is clearly longer than this, and really that shouldn't be the case if you're operating on the log chart. Wait a minute, wave 3 can't be the shortest. Does that work? It doesn't have to be the longest, it just can't be the shortest. It does work, just about. Man, that is a compressed count. Fine, let's go with that then. So the only way this is making a new high, as far as I'm concerned, is if you were to redefine the entire count from the genesis, which is not the count that I've been running the last 5 years. So that would have to be a wave 3, that would have to be a wave 4, then fine. You're going to get your 100k, we're in an impulse, 84k, 60k, 100k, that is the bubble top. Then we go into a large correction, and then it just comes down to, do you agree with this count? I don't know. Let's see what the YouTube audience thinks. Do you agree with this count? Do you agree the 20k top that I called 6 months before it occurred, that was just a third of the third? And then do you agree the 69k top was the 5th off the third? And now we're going into the wave 5. Is there any time equality we can do here? 10 to... No, that was just way too quick. It's going to take longer than a year, obviously. So that would be the count. I suppose the only other thing supporting this count, the long-term count I'm talking about, is the curves. Let me just have a look at the curves. It's just a whole lot easier just going into Nvidia and being up 6 figures, but apparently people don't really want to do that. So let's just have a look here. Is there any curve? I can have a look here on path. That's it. So it's the logarithmic curve that is operating there. And I mean, frankly, this did actually top out at 69k. This curve definitely got hit. But let's just run with this, right? So let's just do copy and paste, and let's run that bad boy onto there, and there you go, something like that. Yeah, so right, fine. So like I said, if you're looking at this as an impulse, number one, it could already have topped here yesterday. Obviously, we called a top a month ago and it's not occurred, right? So yes, it's very close to 69k. You think it's going to go all the way. It's right at the limit where you can be wrong, though. So I suppose, if nothing else, one is getting a good short entry, right? You're at the limit where you think you could be wrong, which is really the way you should enter any trade. So if you're looking for a new high, you'd have to redefine the count as this, that this is the count, right? I find that hard to believe, but yes, I don't believe the Nasdaq has topped. I don't believe Nvidia has topped. I don't believe the S&P has topped. I think we're very close to a top. So yeah, that would have to be the count. You think we're in the last super cycle wave 5, followed by a very large correction, which obviously takes us back all the way back down to 4 digits, frankly. Yeah, so fine. Now, where does this top come in, just out of interest? Where are those lines gone? Let's just get these lines onto the other. Now, obviously, I'm not doing this, you know, extra precise here, but fuck. All right, let's just try that again, and there you go. Right, so we're gonna go with that there. Right, so yeah. Right, fine. So one would have to redefine the long-term count from the genesis. That's the first thing that you must do. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. It can't be a 1-2-1-2. Otherwise, we're going to go to 2.5 million. That's not going to happen. So you'd have to read that as fine. So that would be super cycle wave 5, and then we'll just call that, let's just call that primary degree. Let's just put it in red. So fine, that would have to be your count. So if you're, and then like I said, 84k, 69k, followed by 100k, fine. That would have to be your count. You would have to say 69k was wave 3, sorry, was wave 5 off a larger super cycle wave 3. And you would also have to be happy with calling this a wave 4 in its very peculiar WXY shape. Well, not much alternation to super cycle wave 2. Fine. So we have 2 interpretations there. Do we have a third interpretation? Let's have a look. What was the third interpretation that I was running? Yes, it's the expanded flat. That's it. Right, fine. So the third interpretation is it's a large expanded flat. We are in a super cycle correction, albeit it's a ABC. We're making a new high just to fail back here again, go above, go back under, and then we're going to have a large correction all the way down. And that would support the idea. So because in a flat correction, you can be in a secular bear market here on Bitcoin, but obviously it can make a new high, right? So a flat correction does make a high. It's basically a false high. So those are the 3 interpretations. I don't think there's any more interpretations here. Number 1, it's topped. You're getting a very good risk reward to be short, frankly. Number 2, you'd have to redefine the entire count from the genesis and be happy with this being an impulse, even though that doesn't look like a wave 1, that doesn't look like a wave 2. This whole thing looks corrective, but fine, we're going to have to go with that because this seems to defy the law of science most of the time. Doesn't really make any sense, but you'll have to redefine your count from the genesis, and you'd have to be happy with calling that an impulse, in which case 84k, 69k, 100k, then it's an ABC. Frankly, with so many interpretations, why not just buy Nvidia like half the group did, the entire group did, and most of my YouTube subs, and you're up comfortably, even without leverage? But fine, people want to know about Bitcoin, and then that's that. So that's all I have, really. I don't really think there's much to update. Those are the 3 interpretations. I've given all 3 of them now, so people can't, you know, question which one do I think is most likely. Well, obviously I've been running this as a wave 5, but if you were to say, and it's very, very valid, that Bitcoin is at least a liquidity marker, yes, I'm not calling for an S&P crash just yet. I still think we're a couple of years away. I still think even this will be a C wave diagonal, then this, then this, then this. So during the next 18 months, is it beyond comprehension? Well, let's just say the world ends, let's just say 2025. Over the next year and a half, easily year and a half. I mean, we're not that close to the end of the world yet. Although we are closer than we've ever been. Is it beyond comprehension that Bitcoin could double in price from 51 to 100k? I would say no to that. But like I said, you would have to be redefining your count. The count on the S&P since 2008, right? And certainly since first YouTube video, I've never changed the long-term count. I was very, very happy in knowing exactly what went on. Why does Bitcoin seem to defy logic? Because the S&P doesn't, Nvidia doesn't. We've got a very clear long-term count. So fine. The only interpretation would have to be the count which I've just given now. That you'd have to say from 2011 to 2021 was just the super cycle wave 3. Now we're in super cycle wave 5. I don't want to extrapolate targets higher than 100,000, frankly. I think if you get 100,000, fine, fine. That's it. Bitcoin is a liquidity marker. I did think it would be strange for Bitcoin to have a huge sell-off. I was calling for more of a consolidation than a rally. But hey, there you go. Let's see what happens. What does that mean for Ethereum? Well, I'm honestly not too sure, given that I've got 3 interpretations for the S&P. For Bitcoin, to me, that is still a 5 million year top, though. But once again, if it's going to pull a Bitcoin here and just defy logic, I would have to rework the entire count from the genesis. So let's not even go to Ethereum. Let's not even go there. But those are the 3 interpretations. For anyone who is wondering, like I said, it would have been a lot easier just to buy Nvidia and SMCI, and you would have done fine, But fine. That is the count. So well done to anyone who's holding Bitcoin. Obviously, we have to give credit to longer-term investors. Who don't really know how to read a chart, who bought at 20k, waited over how long did they wait to make their money back? Well done. Only 1,099 days, no value of opportunity cost, and then now break even. And well done to anyone who bought at 69k, waited 2 years, and he's still down on your money. So well done to long-term investors, even the ones who bought at 28k. You returned 200% in 2261 when Nvidia's gone up 10x, maybe even 15x during that time. But anyway, well done to long-term investors. I think the masterclass might benefit you there. Anyway, I think we'll wrap it up there.